Once upon a time, in a little cottage surrounded by sparkling winter snow, there lived a kind woman who longed for a child of her own. Seeing her sadness, a friendly neighbor gave her a magical seed wrapped in a warm cloth. "Plant it in a flower pot," the neighbor said with a knowing smile. That evening, with snowflakes dancing outside the window, the woman planted the seed. The next morning, something extraordinary had happened. A beautiful plant had grown overnight, its bud shaped like a snowy white tulip. "Oh, how lovely," the woman whispered as she gently kissed the flower. At her touch, the petals slowly opened, and inside sat a tiny girl, no bigger than a thumb.
And inside sat a tiny girl, no bigger than a thumb,
Glowing softly like a winter star. "I will call you Thumbelina," said the woman, her heart finally warm. Thumbelina brought light to the woman's home all winter long. She slept in a polished walnut shell lined with soft cotton. During the day, she floated in a little saucer of water, as if she were skating on a frozen pond, using a tulip leaf as her boat. But as winter melted away and spring began to awaken the world, something unexpected happened. One early spring night, while the moon shone through the window, a mother toad hopped inside from the thawing garden outside. She landed beside the peacefully sleeping Thumbelina.
"What a wonderful bride she will be for my son,"
the toad croaked. Without another sound, she scooped Thumbelina up and carried her outside to the riverside. She placed Thumbelina on a large water lily leaf. "We'll keep her here while we prepare the wedding," she said to her clumsy toad son. "She cannot escape from the middle of the river." When Thumbelina woke with the warm spring sun, she found herself floating on the river, not in her cozy walnut shell. She began to cry softly, her tiny voice trembling. The toads ignored her tears. But the little fish below the water heard her sadness. They felt sorry for the tiny girl on the leaf. Together, they nibbled at the lily stem until it broke free. The leaf drifted away, carrying Thumbelina downstream into the beautiful early days of spring. She floated through the late spring and early summer, eating wild berries, listening to birds, and admiring butterflies. But as summer ended, food grew scarce, and the days turned chilly. One cold day, Thumbelina curled up beneath a mushroom just as the first snowflakes began to fall. A friendly field mouse, gathering wood for winter, spotted her. "Oh, my poor dear, you must come home with me," she said. Thumbelina gratefully followed her into a warm, snug burrow. Thumbelina spent the winter safe underground, helping the mouse with chores and keeping warm by the fire. Soon, the mouse's wealthy neighbor, Mr. Mole, became a frequent visitor. He admired Thumbelina and quickly decided that she would make a suitable wife. In early spring, Mr. Mole invited them to visit his home. As they walked through his tunnel, they found an injured swallow lying still.
"Oh, you poor little thing. Don't worry, we're here now."
We have to help him. He's so weak.
"Pay no mind," said the mole. It is hopeless. But Thumbelina stayed behind and tended to the bird in secret. On all cold winter nights, she brought him food and warmth. When the spring sun finally reached the tunnels, the swallow regained strength and flew back into the sky. He asked Thumbelina to come with him, but she said no. She could not leave her friend, the field mouse.
Thumbelina, fly away with me to a warmer land.
I cannot, dear friend. I must stay here with the field mouse.
The field mouse and Mr. Mole planned a wedding that Thumbelina did not want. One autumn day, she sat crying quietly when a familiar shadow crossed the golden sunlight. It was the swallow. "Thumbelina," he said gently, "I am flying south before winter returns. Will you come with me?" This time, Thumbelina said yes. She climbed onto his back, and together they flew over forests, mountains, and fields until they reached a warm country filled with flowers. He gently placed her on a large blossom, and as the petals opened, a tiny flower king appeared, no bigger than she was. "Welcome," he said softly. "You are safe among your own kind." All around her, other flowers opened, revealing little winged people just like her. Thumbelina suddenly felt, perhaps for the first time, that she truly belonged here. Thumbelina speaks only of your size in the human world, but here, you are more than that. In our world, he explained, names reflect who you are. He lifted a glowing petal, and a warm light circled around her. "Your new name shall be Maya, the little miracle of spring." The name felt warm, gentle, and right. Tiny wings unfolded from her back, shimmering like morning dew. The flower folk cheered, "Welcome, Maya!"
Welcome, Maya!
And from that moment on, she was no longer Thumbelina, the lost girl, but Maya, the fairy who finally found her true home among the flowers.
In a quaint little workshop, filled with the scent of sawdust and the quiet hum of tools, lived an old carpenter named Geppetto. His days were often solitary, his only companions the wooden figures he meticulously carved.
If only I had a son.
More than anything, Geppetto longed for a child. One evening, as a particularly bright star twinkled in the velvet sky, Geppetto put the finishing touches on his latest creation, a small, lively-looking puppet carved from pine wood. He named him Pinocchio. With a sigh that carried all his hopes and dreams, Geppetto whispered, "Oh, how I wish you were a real boy." He then tucked Pinocchio into a tiny bed and drifted off to sleep, his heart heavy with a silent prayer. As the moon cast its gentle glow through the workshop window, a soft, shimmering light filled the room. A beautiful blue fairy, radiant and kind, appeared beside Pinocchio's bed. With a wave of her wand, she touched the wooden puppet. A spark of life ignited within him. Pinocchio's eyes fluttered open, wide with wonder. He wiggled his fingers, then his toes, and to his utter astonishment, he sat up. "I can move."
Yes, Pinocchio, you can move, and if you prove yourself to be brave, truthful, and unselfish, one day you can become a real boy.
She then gave him a special gift, a nose that would grow longer whenever he told a lie, and shrink back to normal when he spoke the truth or apology. Pinocchio, overjoyed, promised to be the best boy he could be. The next morning, Geppetto awoke to the sound of Pinocchio's excited chatter. His heart swelled with happiness when he saw Pinocchio moving like a real boy.
"Oh, my little Pinocchio, you're a real boy."
He was extremely happy because now he has a son. To ensure Pinocchio received a good education, Geppetto, with a loving but heavy heart, sold his only coat to buy him a schoolbook.
For you, my son, I would sell the coat off my own back. Go to school, my dear boy, and learn all that you can and make me proud.
Pinocchio, clutching his new book, set off with a skip in his step, eager to make his father proud. But the world outside Geppetto's workshop was full of distractions. On his way to school, Pinocchio encountered two sly characters, a cunning fox and a mischievous cat. Their glib tongues and false smiles, they praised Pinocchio's fine clothes and his shiny new book.
School is so dull.
Come with us to the Grand Puppet Show. It's much more exciting than boring lessons.
Pinocchio hesitated, remembering his promise to Geppetto and the Blue Fairy's words. But the lure of adventure was strong. Just for a little while, he thought, trying to convince himself. Fox asked if he was going to school. Pinocchio, feeling a strange tingle, replied, "No, I'm going to the puppet show." Instantly, his nose began to grow, stretching out like a twig. He gasped in surprise, but the fox and cat merely chuckled, pretending not to notice. At the puppet show, Pinocchio was captivated by the dancing figures, but his joy was short-lived. The cruel puppet master, Stromboli, saw Pinocchio's unique ability to move on his own and decided to keep him, locking him in a cage. Pinocchio cried, his wooden tears falling silently. He had abandoned his father's wishes, lied, and now he was trapped. The Blue Fairy appeared again, her expression gentle but firm.
What happened? Why aren't you at school, Pinocchio?
Pinocchio, ashamed, tried to make excuses, each lie causing his nose to grow longer and longer, until it was so long he could barely move.
Oh, Blue Fairy, I'm so sorry.
He finally sobbed, confessing everything. With a touch of her wand, his nose returned to normal, and she freed him, but warned him to be more careful. Pinocchio, chastened, promised to do better. Then he set off for home, determined to find Geppetto. But his journey was far from over. The fox and cat, ever watchful, reappeared, pretending to be his friends.
We know a place where you can become rich, the fox exclaimed, his voice dripping with false sincerity. The Field of Miracles. It is the place where you bury your gold coins there, and by morning, they'll grow into a magnificent money tree.
Pinocchio, despite his earlier lesson, was still naive. He buried his coins, full of hope, only to wake up and find nothing but empty earth. The fox and cat had stolen his money. Heartbroken and hungry, Pinocchio continued his journey, only to be lured onto a carriage bound for Pleasure Island, a place where boys could play all day, eat sweets, and never go to school. It seemed like a dream come true. Pinocchio reveled in the endless games and treats, forgetting all about his father and his promises. But slowly, subtly, a terrifying change began. First, his ears grew long and furry. Then, a tail sprouted from his back. Soon, he was braying instead of speaking, transforming into a donkey. The boys on Pleasure Island were being turned into donkeys and sold to work in mines and circuses. Pinocchio, terrified and filled with deep regret, was sold to a cruel circus master. He was forced to perform tricks, his heart aching for his father and the life he had thrown away. During a performance, he stumbled and fell, injuring himself. The circus master, deeming him useless, decided to throw him into the sea, hoping to drown him and use his skin for a drum. But the moment Pinocchio hit the water, the magic of Pleasure Island began to wear off. He transformed back into a puppet, without any donkey ears and a tail. He swam desperately, his wooden body bobbing in the waves, his only thought to find Geppetto. He heard whispers from passing sailors about an old carpenter who had set out to sea in search of his lost son, only to be swallowed by a monstrous whale. A cold dread gripped Pinocchio's heart. It was his fault, his selfishness, his lies, his disobedience.
I'm so very sorry. Please, please forgive me.
A profound sense of love and responsibility washed over him. He knew what he had to do. With newfound courage, Pinocchio plunged into the dark, churning waters, determined to find the whale and rescue Geppetto, no matter the cost. The ocean was vast and terrifying, but Pinocchio swam with a fierce determination he had never known. He searched for days, his wooden body battered by the waves, his spirit fueled by love. Finally, he saw it, a colossal whale, larger than any ship, its enormous mouth agape. Without a moment's hesitation, Pinocchio swam directly into its cavernous maw. Inside, it was dark and damp, filled with the smell of fish and seaweed. He called out, his voice echoing in the gloom.
Pinocchio?
A weak voice answered.
Is that truly you, my son?
Pinocchio stumbled forward, and there, amidst the debris, was Geppetto, frail and pale, but alive.
Here, let me help you.
He had been living inside the whale's belly, surviving on scraps. Their reunion was tearful and full of relief.
Father, I found you.
Pinocchio, my boy, I thought I lost you forever.
We must escape, father, Pinocchio declared. He noticed a flickering candle, almost out of oil. A plan formed in his mind. Pinocchio began to gather all the flammable materials, old wood, broken masts, anything that would burn. He carefully built a small fire, using the last drops of oil. The smoke began to fill the whale's stomach. The giant creature, annoyed, began to cough and sneeze. With a mighty expulsion, the whale sneezed them out.
At last. We are safe, Pinocchio.
Pinocchio, holding on to Geppetto, swam towards the shore. He carried his father on his back, pushing through the waves until they reached the beach. Exhausted but safe, they collapsed onto the sand, holding each other tight. Back in Geppetto's workshop, Pinocchio nursed his father back to health. He worked tirelessly, helping Geppetto, fetching water, and never complaining. He was honest, kind, and always put his father's needs first. One morning, Pinocchio looked at his wooden hands, then at his father's worn face. He wished he could truly be a son, a real boy. Just then, the blue fairy appeared, her eyes shining.
Pinocchio, you have proven yourself brave, truthful, and unselfish. You have learned the true meaning of love and sacrifice.
With a wave of her wand, a warm sensation spread through Pinocchio. His skin softened, his joints became flexible.
Hands. They're real. I'm a real boy.
Pinocchio, my boy.
Geppetto awoke to find a joyful, living boy standing beside his bed.
Father.
Tears streamed down his face as he embraced his son. Pinocchio, now real, felt the warmth of his father's hug. From that day forward, Pinocchio and Geppetto lived a life filled with love and happiness. Pinocchio never forgot the lessons he learned, remembering that true magic lies in a kind heart.
Far beneath the rolling waves, deeper than the reach of sunlight, lay a magnificent underwater kingdom hidden from the human world. Here lived the Sea King and his 6 daughters. Each mermaid was graceful and radiant, with flowing hair and voices that echoed beautifully through the sea. They loved to sing together.
Dance and play, singing songs throughout the day.
Their laughter and music drifting far beyond the palace walls. But the youngest daughter was different. She was quieter than her sisters, more thoughtful, with curious eyes that mirrored the deep blue of the ocean itself. While the others raced through the waves or practiced their songs, the Little Mermaid often lingered behind, observing the world with gentle wonder. She loved to listen. She listened to the whisper of the tides as they brushed against rocks and coral. She listened to the soft creak of ancient shipwrecks resting on the ocean floor. She listened to the stories carried by drifting shells and the secrets shared by passing sea creatures. A grandmother, wise and kind, often sat beside her and spoke of distant wonders.
The ocean holds many secrets, child, but none so magnificent as the floating islands where the sky meets the sea.
She told her about the land of humans, about warm, golden sunlight that touched the skin, green forests that stretched as far as the eye could see, and a vast sky filled with stars instead of water. She spoke of birds that flew freely through the air, and of people who walked upon the land, building homes and sailing across the sea.
One day, you will be allowed to rise to the surface and see it all for yourself.
The Little Mermaid treasured those words. She held them close to her heart, dreaming of a world she had never seen, yet, somehow, already loved. At last, on the evening of her 15th birthday, the long-awaited day arrived. With gentle encouragement from her sisters, the Little Mermaid began her journey upward.
It's time! Go, sister! We're right here! Be brave!
Slowly and carefully, she swam toward the surface, leaving behind the familiar glow of her underwater home. The water grew lighter and warmer with every movement. Then suddenly, her head broke through the waves. Above her stretched a sky painted in colors she had never imagined. The sunset glowed in shades of rose, gold, and soft purple, reflecting across the water like a dream. The air felt cool and fresh, carrying scents she could not name. Nearby, a ship floated upon the sea, glowing with lantern light. Music and laughter drifted across the waves, bright and joyful. Curious, the Little Mermaid swam closer, peeking carefully above the water. On the deck of the ship stood a young prince, laughing with his friends. His smile was warm, and his eyes shone with kindness and excitement as he looked out over the sea. As the Little Mermaid watched him, she felt something stir deep within her, a feeling new and powerful. Her heart beat faster, and though she did not yet understand it, she knew that this moment would change her life forever. She remained hidden among the waves, watching in silence, her heart racing like a drum. But as the night deepened, the sea began to shift. Without warning, dark clouds rolled across the sky. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and the once calm sea began to grow restless. Waves rose higher, crashing against the ship as the wind howled fiercely. The Little Mermaid watched in fear as lightning split the sky in blinding flashes. Rain poured down, and the ship was tossed violently by the storm. Then, disaster struck. With a terrible crack, the ship broke apart. Sailors were thrown into the raging sea, calling for help as waves pulled them under. The Little Mermaid searched desperately through the darkness, her heart pounding. Then she saw him. the prince struggling to stay afloat. Without hesitation, she swam toward him. She wrapped her arms around him, holding his head above the water, shielding him as best she could from the crashing waves. Though the storm raged around them, she did not let go. Slowly, with great effort, she guided him through the churning sea toward the shore. At last, they reached the beach. She laid him gently upon the sand and listened closely, waiting anxiously until she heard his breath return. Relief washed over her as his chest rose and fell. But his footsteps approached. The little mermaid slipped back into the sea, hiding behind the rocks. From there, she watched as a young woman discovered the prince and helped him awaken.
Hear me. Wake up, please. What happened?
You're awake.
I am now. Thank you.
The prince never knew who had truly saved him. But the little mermaid would never forget him. Back in her underwater home, nothing felt the same. The songs of her sisters no longer brought her joy, and the beauty of the ocean could not quiet her thoughts. Her heart belonged to the surface now, and to the prince she could not forget. From her grandmother, she learned that mermaids did not have immortal souls, but humans did.
If a human truly loves you, you may gain a soul like theirs.
The little mermaid's heart filled with longing. The idea of belonging fully to that world, of sharing a soul and a life, felt distant, yet irresistible. At last, she made a brave and dangerous decision. She swam to the far edge of the sea, to a place where the water grew dark and twisted shadows clung to broken rocks. Few mermaids dared to go there. This was where the sea witch lived. The sea witch listened carefully as the little mermaid spoke of her wish to become human. "I can help you," the witch said slowly, her voice smooth and cold. "But every wish has a price." She offered a magical potion that would transform the mermaid's tail into human legs. In return, the little mermaid would lose her beautiful voice, and every step she took on land would feel like walking on sharp glass.
If the prince loves another, your heart will break, and you will vanish into sea foam.
The little mermaid hesitated only for a moment. Then she nodded.
The bargain is sealed.
With a swirl of dark magic and glowing bubbles, the bargain was sealed. When the little mermaid awoke on the shore, the sun warmed her face, and the sound of waves filled her ears. Where her tail once had been, she now had human legs. The pain was sharp, but her determination was stronger. Soon the prince found her. Though she could not speak, he was drawn to her gentle smile and kind eyes. He welcomed her into his palace, curious about the quiet girl who had appeared from the sea. She learned the ways of the human world, walking through gardens filled with flowers. Listening to music she could no longer sing, and watching the stars from balconies high above the ocean. Yet every step brought pain, and every day her heart ached with words she could never speak. Though the prince cared for her deeply, he believed his rescuer was someone else, the girl who had found him on the shore. And soon he was promised to her. On the night of the prince's wedding, the Little Mermaid stood once more on the deck of a ship. The sea lay calm and dark beneath her, reflecting the pale glow of the moon. The music from the celebration drifted softly across the water, joyful and distant, as if it belonged to another world. She stood quietly, her heart heavy, her thoughts drifting between two worlds she could never fully belong to. Slowly, the surface of the sea began to shimmer. Her sisters rose silently from the water, their faces pale and their long hair cut short, floating gently around them like shadows. They looked at her with love and sorrow in their eyes.
We made a deal.
They whispered, holding out a shining blade that caught the moonlight.
We gave up our hair so that you might live. If you give up the prince, you may return to the sea before the sun rises.
The Little Mermaid closed her eyes. She stepped softly toward the sleeping prince, who rested peacefully nearby, unaware of the choice that stood before him. His face was calm, his breathing steady, just as it had been on the shore when she first saved him. Her hands trembled as she looked at him. She thought of the ocean, of coral gardens, drifting shells, and the gentle songs of her sisters. She thought of her grandmother's stories, of sunlight and souls, of love that asks for nothing in return. At last, she understood. True love was not about being chosen. It was about choosing kindness. As the first light of dawn touched the sky, the Little Mermaid stepped back. With a quiet breath, she lowered the blade into the sea. It slipped from her hands and disappeared beneath the waves, leaving the water undisturbed. She turned toward the ocean. With every step, the pain grew sharper, but her heart felt strangely light. She walked into the waves, letting the water rise around her legs, her waist, her shoulders. The sea welcomed her gently. As the sun rose higher, the Little Mermaid expected to fade away, to dissolve into foam and vanish with the tide. But instead, she felt something change. The water lifted her, and a warm breeze surrounded her. Slowly, she rose above the surface, weightless and free. The pain disappeared, replaced by a calm she had never known. She had become something new, a spirit of air and sea, born of kindness and selfless love. From above, she looked down upon the ocean she had always known. The waves shimmered softly, and the world felt wide and full of possibility. A gentle voice surrounded her, carried by the wind. Because she had given without expecting anything in return. Because she had chosen love over herself. She was given a new path. She would earn an immortal soul not through sorrow, but through kindness, by watching over sailors in storms, guiding lost children, and whispering hope wherever it was needed. And so, she drifted between sea and sky, carried by sunlight and breeze, her heart finally at peace. Though her story began in the depths of the ocean, it did not end there. It rose into the sky, carried on the whisper of waves and the promise that true love is found in selfless hearts.
Thank you for listening to this wonderful story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the Eternal Fairy Tales channel and hit the bell so you won't miss any magical adventure. See you soon with a new enchanted story.